Video, we're going to be discussing how to find the percent of a number. The questions we want to answer are: how do you find the percent of a number, and what happens when your percent is greater than 100? So first of all, I want to model percents of numbers. A percent is a part to whole comparison where the whole is always 100. So when we find the percent of a number, we are finding a part of it. So when you find the percent of a number, you are finding a part of it and what part it would be out of 100. So here I've got kind of a number line model here, or a grid that shows 100% from 0 all the way up to 100. And I'm going to model what percents of numbers look like. So the first question I have here is, what is 30% of 40? Well, I have my percents already marked. So what I want to do is I want to take this 40 and I want to cut it up into 10 equal pieces, because that's what I have my grid here divided into. So I'm going to start with 0. And I want to end with a total of 40, since 40 is the whole amount that I'm finding a percent of. And if I cut this into 10 equal parts, each part is going to be 4. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36, and 40. So now I've divided my 40 into 10 equal parts, as well as my percent into 10 equal parts. So what I want to find is 30% of 40. So I can imagine kind of filling my grid up here. There's 10% of 40, 20%, and 30%. So this would be 30% of 40. And if I look at that bar, 30% of 40 is 12. So that's what we're talking about when we're finding the percent of a number, is what part of it is it compared to 100. So let's look at the next one. What's 70% of 40? Well, 70% of 40, I would have to fill more of my bar in. There's 50%, 60%, and then I get to 70%. So here is 70% of 40. And if I look at my bar, 70% of 40 is 28. So that's kind of how we can think of modeling our percents, of finding a part of a number where the whole is always out of 100, and we're dividing our number into equal parts here. So let's answer a couple more here. What is 50% of 200? Now 200 is the whole amount that I'm finding a percent of. So I'm going to divide my 200 into 10 equal parts, and each part would be 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, 140, 160, 180, and then 200. So now I've divided my bar up equally, both percents and the number, and I want to find 50% of 200. So 50% of 200 would be filled in to here, or half of my bar is filled in, and 50% of 200 is 100. And then what would 90% of 200 be? Well, I'd have to fill more of my bar in to get all the way up to 90%. And 90% of 200 would be 180. So we can't always make a percent bar for every problem that we want to solve. So how do you find percents of numbers maybe a little more quickly? So to find percent of a number, we're going to write the percent as a decimal or fraction, and we're just going to multiply it by the number we're trying to find the percent of. So for example here, what is 40% of 70? If we want to find 40% of 70, we're going to multiply 70 by 40%. Well, 40% has to be written as a fraction or a decimal. And writing percents as decimals is pretty easy to do. We just divide it by 100. So to find 40% of 70, I'm going to take 70 times 0.4, since that's 40% as a decimal, and 70 times 0.4 is 28. So 40% of 70 is 28. What is 15% of 100? I'm going to multiply 100 by 15% as a decimal, and 15% as a decimal is 0.15. And then if I multiply that, I get 15. So 15% of 100 is 15. What is 55% of 160? I'm going to take 160 and multiply that by 55% written as a decimal, and that is 0.55. 160 times 0.55 is 88. So 55% of 160 is 88. And 75% of 280, I'm going to take 280 and multiply that by 75% as a decimal, which will be 0.75. and you get 210. So 75% of 180 is 210. So finding percents of numbers is actually pretty easy if you can convert your percents to decimals and then multiply. What if the percent is greater than 100? So what if we were trying to model 120% of 60? Well, 60 is the number that I'm trying to find the percent of. So 60 is my whole amount. So I'm going to divide 60 into equal parts. And each part would be 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, 42, 48, 54, and 60. Well, 120%, if I filled my entire bar in, that would be 100%. And 100% of 60 is 60. Well, how do I get 120%? I would need to extend my bar further. So if I added another 10% here, this would be 110%, and that would get me to 66. And if I added another piece to my bar, that would get me to 120%, and that would be 72. So now I'm filling in beyond 100%. So 120% of 60 is 72. So we find that if the percent is greater than 100, the result will be larger than the original number. So we can actually have percents greater than 100. We're actually going to be making the number larger. We're not really finding a part of it. We're finding something larger than it. And we can use the same strategy that we used for the other ones by multiplying the number by the percent as a decimal. So what is 150% of 20? I'm going to multiply 20 by 150% as a decimal, which would be 1.5 or 1.50. So 20 times 1.5 is 30. So 30 is 150% of 20. So you can see we did actually get a number larger than the number we were finding the percent of because it's greater than 100%. What is 160% of 35? I'm going to take 35 and multiply it by 160% as a decimal, which is 1.6. And I get 56. And again, you'll see I got a number larger than what I was finding the percent of because my percent was greater than 100. So 160% of 35 is 56. So what does this look like in real world problems? Mr. Williams earned 3% commission on a sale of $365. How much did Mr. Williams earn? So something you might not know is what a commission is, and a commission is a percent of a sale that a salesperson earns. So when Mr. Williams sells $365 worth of goods, he gets to keep 3% of that as his wages. So we want to know, what is 3% of 365? Well, to find that, I'm going to multiply the 365 by 3% as a decimal, which is 0.03. Remember to watch out for that common pitfall. 3% is not 0.3, it's 0.03. Make sure you're dividing your percent by 100. And when we do that multiplication, we get 10.95. So in this context, Mr. Williams earned $10.95 from that sale. Mackenzie wants to buy a backpack that costs $50. If the tax rate is 6.5%, how much tax will she have to pay? So a tax, again, is a percent of a price that is charged. So when you buy something, you're charged an extra amount, which is called tax, and that's a percentage of the price of the goods that you're buying. So what we want to find out is, what is 6.5% of 50? To do that, I'm going to take 50 and I'm going to multiply that by 6.5% as a decimal. So if I divide that by 100, I get 0.065. And 50 times 0.065 is 3.25. So Mackenzie's going to have to pay an extra $3.25 in tax. So finding percents of numbers, multiplying the number we're finding the percent of by the percent as a decimal or a fraction.